Okay, students, in this tutorial we're going to be looking at making two different types of toggleable platforms. The first is one that turns on and off on its own, and the second is going to be one that turns off after the player has stand on it. So for starters, I'm going to make a new blueprint class, actor. I'm going to call this one BP toggle. I'm going to open it up. And for this one, all we're going to need is a static mesh. I'm going to grab a cube. I'm going to shrink it a bit to be a platform. This is all we need in our components. I'm going to go to my event graph. I'm going to lose these two because I don't need them right now. And I'm going to drag my static mesh into the event graph. So there are 2 bits of code we need here to turn off a platform so that it goes away. The first is its visibility. I'm going to pull off here and type VIS for visibility. And you see we have a couple options here. We have toggle visibility, which will turn it on and off, and set visibility. I'm actually going to use set, even though it would be nice to toggle. And the reason is we're going to have 2 different bits of code, one to turn off and one to turn on. And the reason for that is because physics can't be toggled because there's more than 2 options. So I'm going to choose set visibility here. And we're going to leave all the rest of this as is. This is our set visibility off. I'm going to pull off of the same static mesh, type set collision, and we want set collision enabled, and the type it's going to enable is no collision. Okay, we're going to add some stuff to the front here. One of my favorite nodes is called flip-flop. Typing the word flip, and we're going to make this part A. Flip-flop is a gate where every time it's used, it forces so the next time it's used to use the other one. So I'm going to go ahead, we want this to turn off. I'm going to add a delay here for, say, 2 seconds. So now we have, if it comes into A, it's going to turn off the visibility of our cube, turn off the collision of our cube, and then wait 2 seconds. And I'm going to go ahead and select all of this and hit Control-C on my keyboard and then Control-V on my keyboard to copy the whole thing. I'm going to connect this to B and click the checkbox for new visibility, yes, and collision to collision enabled. So this is now our on. Okay, I'm going to make this a custom event. So I'm going to type custom, and I'm going to give this the name toggle. So this is now an event, and we can call it. So now, whenever toggle is called, it is either going to turn it off or turn it on. So at the end here, after the delay, I'm going to call toggle, which is the name of that function we just created. Excuse me, that event we just created. So now this code will perfectly work, but first we have to start it. So we left this begin play up here, and I'm going to put a toggle here as well. This is our code. So as soon as we hit play, it's going to toggle, which in this case means it's going to come down here, and it's going to set the visibility to off, and the collision to off, wait 2 seconds, and then go back through again. And the second time it goes through, it's going to hit go into B, and it's going to turn the visibility back on, turn the collision back on, wait 2 seconds, and again go to toggle. I'm going to hit compile and save. And let's see how this one does. I'm just going to put it over here and raise it up a little bit. So immediately I start, you can see it's gone. There it is. Oop, jumped right off. Here we go. It's there, now it's not. It's there, and now it's not. You can see I can fall, and it comes back. Now, if you don't like how it immediately disappears, back here in the code, we could switch these. You could make it so that it starts on and then goes off. Another really nice addition here would be to promote this to a variable. Call this off time. I capitalized the T so that it made me a separate variable. And I'm going to right click on this one. And instead of duration, I'm going to call this one on time. And compile. I'm going to make both of these numbers visible here as public. This will now allow me to make this toggleable platform have multiple different on and off times. So over here on the right, I could say on time 4, maybe 5 even, and off time 3. And you'll see, even though it's the same as this one, which is set to 2, they should end up being on different cycles. So now you can see that one is on for 5 seconds, and then off for 2, or 3, I guess. So this can allow you to have all sorts of cycles that you combine. You could also come in here, and if you wanted, on this initial begin play, you could put a delay. I'm dragging off here. And for this one, we can convert to a variable. And I would call this one start delay. Compile, and I'm going to make it say 3 seconds. So now at the start, each of these will stay on for 3 doing nothing before it hits its initial toggle. If we go ahead and make this also visible, you can use it to time these separately. So the start delay on this one can be 1, and the start delay on this one can be 2. So you can start having a pattern where you can play with those cycles. I'm going to go ahead and save all. And we're going to look at making our second toggleable platform by just duplicating this one, because we've done a lot of work and I don't want to do it again. And so we're going to save a lot of time. I'm going to call this one BP, and I'm going to call this one collision toggle. Okay, so here's the code we initially had. And we're not going to need this on event begin play toggle. So we can go ahead and delete all of that. But we are going to need a new component. So I'm going to go back to my viewport, and I'm going to add a collision. Here's a box collision. And I'm going to call this box trigger, just to make my code simple. And I want this box to be the size of my platform, and to be just barely sticking out of the top there, so that you and I know that the box is big, but it's only going to trigger sort of if my feet are touching it. Back in here, we're going to replace this toggle custom event that we're doing with instead a off the trigger, an event begin overlap. So we're quite used to this guy. I'm going to drag off from other actor with third to get our third person character, and put this into our flip-flop, which actually we're going to get rid of in a second. So forget I did that. We're going to put it into a delay, which I'm going to put probably this one. We'll use on time. I'm going to hit Control on my keyboard, or sorry, excuse me, Alt on my keyboard and click to just break some stuff. So this first thing I'm putting in here is on time into delay as soon as I walk on. So this now on time is how long it remains on after I touch it. Then I'm going to have it go in. Here is my set visibility, set collision enabled. This turns the static mesh off and the collision off. Finally, I have here off time. This is how long it remains off. Can delete my toggles. And then over here, I have static mesh again. This turns it back on. Here we're turning visibility and then collision back on. So reading the code, if I step in the box, it's going to wait for a few seconds, then it's going to turn off the platform, then it's going to wait for a few more seconds, then it's going to turn back on the platform. We don't need our start delay variable, so right here on the left, I'm going to right-click and delete it. So I'm going to go ahead and compile and save. I'm going to remove some of the stuff because we're getting a little cluttered up in here on my test platform. I'm going to bring on the collision tile. We're going to test it out. You can see it sticks around. If I'm on top of it, 2 seconds later, it disappears and I fall through it. And then a little bit later, it comes back. And this could allow us to do some pretty fun stuff like this, where I can now run through these and watch them turn off behind me. There's one more thing we would want to make in this just to make sure that we're nice and safe, which is we really should also be turning off the collision on the trigger. So we really should be bringing in the trigger as well, because we want it so that if it's not there, we don't trigger it again. So I'm going to connect this to set collision enabled, no collision. And I'm going to drag it over here and also put it on select collision enabled, collision enabled. And the reason we do this is so that you don't re-trigger it while it's off and confuse the code, right? Because it's still collidable, so I could fall through it and it could set another situation. It just foolproofs it. And that is 2 different types of toggleable platforms.